Good afternoon. My name is Diane Glass. I'm the Commercial Director at IOC Research, and I'm very pleased to be leading this panel session for you today at this year's incredible BETT show. The session's going to explore some of the successful and innovative initiatives that some international schools are leading that respond to today's most important education challenges. I'm joined today by a panel of senior leaders from 4 really exceptional international schools. We have Maggie Raffi at the end there, Carina Nilsson, Graham Laurie, and Terry McAdams. More from you all in just a moment. First, a few details on the world's international schools market and why more people are talking about international schools today. International schools are schools which teach in English, wholly or partly in English, and primarily in countries where English is not the first language. In countries where English is an official language, schools are included in this sector if they teach a curriculum not of the host nation and are international in their orientation. 20 years ago, it's true to say that the majority of student enrollment in international schools were children from expatriate families. This is no longer the case. Now, 80% of children is from wealthy local families, and this has led to significant and continuous increase in bilingual education, as well as a growing recent trend in some markets of schools charging more affordable fees in order to cater to the needs of the local population. The international schools market is wide and varied, and accurate data is a requirement if suppliers are to understand the nature of the market. IOC Research is the only organization in the world to concentrate solely on collecting data and market intelligence on international English-speaking schools. We've been doing this now for 25 years. We have a large team of field-based researchers who this year are going to be serving over 2,000 premium and mid-market international schools globally, with around 1,400 of those being in Asia and the Middle East. Much of this involves face-to-face interviews with heads, around 700, which allows us to determine how the market is developing and what's influencing market change. We also have a large desk-based team of researchers. So let's have a look at some of that data. Here you can see some trends on the international schools market from IOC Research. We provide annual trends, so the data you see here is from July of each year, typically the end of the academic year for most international schools. It shows how the international schools market has grown since the year 2000. The number of schools has increased by well over 300% in that time, and the number of students attending English medium international schools in July was 5.65 million. Student enrollment in the international schools has grown by over 5 million in 20 years. Enrollment within the market has seen a compound annual growth rate of 7.1% since 2010, and tuition fee income has grown by 8.8% during that same time. Many governments in developing countries now recognize international schools as a route to improving K-12 education provision within their countries quickly and effectively, and restrictions that have existed in some countries on the number of local children attending the international schools are increasingly being lifted, with Malaysia, Thailand, China, and most recently Vietnam as notable cases. Other growth drivers right now include the demand for expatriate families originating from Asia, although many of these people are replacing a decline in Western expatriates from several countries, most notably, I guess, the Middle East. This changing expatriate demographic is resulting in an increased demand for more affordable international schools, where schools are more manageable within a parent's salary. Nevertheless, there remains a huge demand for premium international schools all around the world. This slide provides a high-level view of where the schools are and also data on the percentage of international schools that deliver the leading curricula. Bilingual schools are typically those that teach one language of learning, where it's English, and the other one is the language of the country of location. There are 22 sub-regions in the world, and here you can see the top 12 for the number of international schools. You'll notice that the first 4 most popular regions are all in Asia. Western Asia has the most schools, at 1,773. Asia itself accounts for 56% of all the world's schools, and Europe and Asia together represent 75% of the global market. There are 239 different countries or territories around the world where there are international schools, and here you can see the top 10 countries, including all the new schools that have opened this academic year, and this is based on data from ISC in January this year. And here you can see current student enrollment as of this January. When you look at these student numbers, there's quite a contrast between China and the UAE. Most schools in the UAE are high capacity, kindergarten all the way through year 12, whereas in China, there are more new schools growing organically right now from earlier years up, or schools catering just for 16 to 18-year-olds. Interestingly, 80% of the student body in the UAE is foreign, with only around 120,000 Emirati students attending the international schools. So why are international schools setting education standards? Well, as independent schools, they're autonomous. They're far less restricted by government funding and education policy. The market is highly competitive, not only between the international schools themselves, but in terms of appealing to parents who might consider local state schools or foreign boarding schools as other options. The market's very attractive for teachers wishing to work overseas, and it draws on the best-of-breed educators from all over the world. Most international schools employ staff from a range of countries, which are good education incubators. Many of them are highly skilled and experienced. This pooling of best practice is hugely powerful for innovation and progress. So, let's hear about some of that innovation and progress right now. I'm going to stand down here so everybody can see you. Let me properly introduce the panel, if I could, right now. Maggie Rafi has been the principal of Shri KDU International School since 2013. She led SKIS to become the first school in Malaysia to achieve the International School Quality Mark at gold level. Carina Nilsson is principal at SSHL, an international boarding and day school in Sweden based around humanistic and holistic principles. Graham Lewis, on the left there, is Partnerships Director at the ACS International Schools that are located here in the UK. ACS actually has 4 schools, 3 in the UK and 1 in Qatar. Their curriculum includes all international baccalaureate programs and the top US programs, including advanced placement. Dr. Terry McAdams is Director of Learning Technologies at Branksome Hall Asia, an international girls' school located on Jeju Island in South Korea. Since the school opened 7 years ago, it has become one of the highest achieving IB schools in East Asia. It's the sister school of the independent school Branksome Hall in Canada. All 4 of these schools were finalists in the 2020 IOC Research International School of the Year Awards, which took place this week. And 2 of these schools, Branksome Hall and ACS schools, actually won International School Awards. So congratulations to all of you. Your initiations were all recognized for their level of excellence and ability to be replicated by other schools. Let's hear a bit about them. Carina, if I could come to you first. SSHL was shortlisted for the Future Thinking Innovators Award for an after-school think tank initiative. Could you explain a little bit more about the initiative, please?
Yes, this after-school activity was created by one of my teachers, Clara Hawkins, and it was aimed for changing the focus from learning activities that usually goes on in the classroom to a new type of activity, which means that the students get to research themselves a way into the future thinking. So this group that we have is voluntary, and they participate after school, and we have the brightest students from age of 13 years old up to 18 years old. And we are kind of challenging the McKinsey. We have now been cooperating with a university, and the university asked the students, what will the future student look like? And this student group answered those questions by their own experience, but also by researching all different kinds of themes that they could find by researching all different kinds of sources. And they also answered the question, what will the future student look like? And how can a university reach out and market themselves to find that kind of, attract that kind of student? And this is the kind of work that we work together with a student to use their smart young brains to become something to cooperate with companies, with universities all over, we hope, the world, but we start now in Sweden.
That's great. Thanks very much indeed. Graham, could I come to you now, please? ACS International Schools in London actually won the Digital Technology in Learning initiative at the International School Awards for a service learning equipment sharing project with local state schools. Could you tell us a little bit more about this initiative and also the types of technology that we use, please?
Of course. My job as a partnerships director involves working with everyone. So our local schools, universities, charities, business, all of the exhibitors out there to pool resources. And the idea is that if we all take the resources that are available to us and we put them in the hands of teachers and students, then we can enhance the learning journey for everyone. My job involves me going out to local schools, speaking to head teachers, deputy heads, the teachers, the parents, the students, and I find out what their needs are and what the opportunities are in those schools. And technology was one of those things which was a huge opportunity for us as an independent school to have some sort of impact in the world. And so what we do is we take equipment from companies, we get sponsorship, we use our charitable funds, we buy virtual reality headsets, we buy slow motion cameras, thermal imaging cameras, robots, all sorts of stuff. And we put it in boxes. And we loan that to our local schools and slightly further afield, free of charge. We also offer training, and we use it as a service learning program. So our students in our school learn how to use the various bits and pieces of kit. And then when we take the kit out to the schools, our students get involved in that training program. And so you see it's a win-win for everyone, and I get to play with technology on a regular basis.
That's amazing. Thanks very much indeed, Graham. Terry, Branksome Hall in Asia was also shortlisted and actually won the Future Thinking Innovators Award. Your initiative was a global collaborative, wasn't it, involving 2 sister schools. So how did you utilize education technology to support that particular work?
So Jeju Island in South Korea has set itself the target to be carbon-free by 2030. That's what set up this initiative. We have 100 girls that fly over from Branksome in Canada, and we have 100 grade 9 girls in our school, and they collaborate on a project to design the optimal wind turbine to generate electricity. These girls visit Jeju University, they meet experts, then they have 6 days to prototype and design the perfect wind turbine. They have access to routers, laser cutters, 3D printers, and they go away, they build their designs, they use Fusion 360 to design them, and then they test them. Some of our DP design tech students, along with the teachers, built a wind tunnel, and this wind tunnel is enormous, uses 30 or 40 fans and generates a lot of wind power. They can test their designs, and their designs will produce an average amount of energy for an hour. It's connected to a leaderboard, so each team, if they output the most energy, they go to the top of the leaderboard. They get to iterate their design, retest, and by the end of the week, we have a winner.
Great. Thanks very much indeed. So Maggie, Sri KDU International School was shortlisted for the community initiative that involved students from the school teaching English to children in an underachieving local rural school. Can you tell us about this? Was technology used in any way as part of what sounds like an amazing initiative?
So the initiative was completely student-initiated and student-led, and the school was actually a school for Orang Asli children. That's the Aboriginal children in Malaysia who are the most disadvantaged and disenfranchised. And our school has some of the most advantaged young people. But the students decided they wanted to teach English to these students to try and give them some advocacy and the chance of a better life. So they went weekly, taught them English. The students themselves were the teachers and were trained by our teachers to deliver it. They deliberately decided to make the work in the school very low tech. They didn't use much technology because, in their words, they felt it wasn't sustainable for the children because the school couldn't sustain in the normal lessons the use of technology, and they didn't want the children to be distracted by the technology or jealous. However, they did use technology for preparing the lessons. They're used to their own teachers using Google Classroom and the Google Suite. So they set up a Google Classroom for these lessons and shared and developed resources and communicated that way. We have a very, very strong ethos of service in the school, and the vision of the school is changing lives and enriching communities for a better world. And the students felt that because some of these children who previously had not gone on to education at secondary level did so as a result of the English lessons, that they'd really made a difference.
That's wonderful. Thanks very much indeed, Maggie. Congratulations to you all for these exceptional initiatives, if I could say that. And they all demonstrate some of the innovative learning that's going on at the international schools. Looking beyond these particular initiatives to the broader use of technology, let's now learn a little bit about how international schools are responding to the challenges that are faced within education today. So Graham, if I could come to you first, how are you selecting and implementing the use of EdTech resources within your group of schools to ensure that they're really best optimized for the benefit of student learning or school administration, and to maximize, I guess, your return on investment too?
Very much so. It's really interesting working in a group of schools. In any school you have your technology champions, and you have people who are very passionate about technology and very knowledgeable about technology. Having 4 schools is really useful because obviously we have a greater number of staff, we have more technology champions. But when you look at a partnerships approach and you're working with over 100 different schools across primary, middle schools, secondary schools, special schools, the independent sector, the amount of champions that you have is amazing. And the amount of conversations that happen lead us in the right direction. Now, the nice thing is that as part of our initiative with the technology, we as the independent school take the risk. And so if a school is looking for some sort of peripheral device to do some programming, they're looking at Arduino, they're looking at Raspberry Pi, they're looking at microbit, they're looking at all sorts of different things. What is the most appropriate? And so having a hub, a group of people at the independent school who can point people in the direction of people who have used that equipment before, or point them in the direction of corporate partners that we're working with, means that we can, on the whole, make the right decisions. And when we don't make the right decision, we've spent that money once, and it's not those 100 schools all making the same mistake.
That's really interesting. Thanks very much indeed. Maggie, can I come back to you and ask about your school? How are you ensuring that your selection and use of education technology achieves best value for your school?
I think the key is knowing exactly what you want to invest in the technology for, and what kind of technology will have the best impact on learning. We actually invest more in infrastructure in our school because we have a bring your own device policy, so the students bring their own devices. Initially, this was they could bring any device, but that didn't work. So we decided to specify the device, and we went for iPads for Key Stage 3, and iPads or laptops, Apple laptops for Key Stage 4 and 5. And I think the key also is training the staff and making sure that everybody knows how to use the technology to best effect if you want to get any kind of value out of investing in the technology.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. Let's focus for a moment on well-being, if we could, which is a central focus for many schools now. Carina, how are you using education technology or technology to support well-being at your school?
Well, we have found out that a lot of students in our school, but not only in our school, but they suffer from anxiety. And this is an increasing problem in a lot of schools all over the world. And for us, we decided to start working with not only the physical health, but also the mental health. So in our boarding houses, we are offering the students to get online. We're cooperating with a company, a Norwegian company, and they are giving the students as like a prevention and a helpful teaching to get rid or get better with the anxiety. And it's getting enormously results in our school. And the student is saying that thanks to this, they will have the methods to cope whenever they are getting anxiety or ever when they're dealing with stressful situations.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. Terry, how about at Branksome Hall? Are you using technology to support student or indeed staff well-being? And if so, how? And is it both?
So I run a number of workshops for students, for parents, for staff, focusing on well-being, the importance of sleep, meditation, and although we've had some success, what we found is we can't convince enough parents or students that it's important to get sleep, that it has benefits for learning. So this year, I'm planning on prototyping a number of devices, piloting them to see what effects we have. And some of the teachers have adopted the same devices. So there's 3 in particular that we're focusing on. The first one is I'm wearing an Oura ring. So the Oura ring monitors my sleep. It shows the amount of REM sleep I get, the amount of deep sleep that I get, and I can then change things that I do, like go to bed at the same time, or have a shower before bed, or not eat too late. And I can see how that impacts upon my sleep. I would like to get some students to conduct a study in the boarding house and see whether or not we can improve their behavior, make the importance of sleep a little bit more in the public domain. The other device that I've been exploring and several teachers have adopted is the Muse headset. Again, we do meditation with the students, but it's impossible to tell whether or not they're actually meditating or thinking about other things. With a Muse headset, you can hear rain, and when your mind wanders, the rain gets heavier. So you get instant biofeedback. This encourages you to meditate in an effective way. And I would like to explore that with some of the students as well. And then finally, the last technology that I'm looking at is called HeartMath. And I'd be looking at perhaps using that with the counselors to try and reduce anxiety.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. So let's go on and have a look at the market over the next 10 years. The market, as you can see, is far from saturated. Growth is expected for many years to come. Here are the global projections for the international schools market, which suggests that by 2029, there are likely to be 8,000 more schools opening, catering for another 5 million new students. Thank you all very much indeed.